Thank you very much for the invitation to be here. I need to say that the traveling here wasn't so easy as it used to be. Same applies for the cybersecurity nowadays. Not because of the traveling or cybersecurity itself, but because the environment where we are doing that has been fundamentally changing. And what we have been seeing is the global phenomenon that when these kind of crises are happening, what we are now just seeing, the governments are starting to turning inside. And this is generating this kind of new kind of challenges in the global level. Let me go through a couple of those. My name is Mika Lauhde. I'm the Global Vice President of Cybersecurity and Privacy in Huawei. My job is to travel around in normal conditions, the old normal, around the world, meeting the government, meeting the authorities, meeting the secret services, meeting the military, and understanding what is happening in this cybersecurity and privacy field. And with this knowledge, what I'm collecting is I'm of course advising the Huawei top management, but of course I'm also sharing this knowledge with the governments who are willing to listen. And this is something what I'm planning to do today, tell certain things which has been remaining as the same, but where the changes has been happening. So, in Huawei, we are having basically two different missions. Same applies for the governments, same applies all the companies around the world. Of course, the first one is to build this kind of what we are calling world-class cybersecurity. Trust me, that's the most easiest part in my work. The second thing, which is much more difficult, is the building a trust that the people will be trusting that we have been accomplishing what we have been promising to do, so that we are fulfilling those promises. And this is and will be and has been always the toughest part of the job, independently which country you are coming, independently which company you are working for. What is the fundamental thing is that there is no such thing as business as usual anymore. With the COVID-19, there has been happening a fundamental change, needing addressing threats in the totally new way. It doesn't mean that we have been losing all the legacy what we have been dragging behind us. It's just that we have been generating a new environment where the conditions perhaps are not the same similar way valid. And when we are discussing about telecommunication, 5G, 6G, whatever telecommunication, will be a major enabler of the new remote working digital society, applying for also the recovery from the COVID, and possible for the next pandemics which will be there in the future. Of course, I'm hoping that this would not be the case, but the reality might be looking different. So, how are you then understanding the changing of the environment where we are living? We have been doing a lot of discussions, a lot of papers, generating white papers, best practices for the certain principles which we used to know in the European Commission, in 3GPP, 5GPP, WTO, and of course that we have been making a lot of in our company also these kind of white papers which are explaining the best practices, what we are thinking, how you should be managing the cybersecurity, how you should be working, how the processes, standard operations should be done. But there is something else happening as well. So now what we are seeing with this COVID-19 is that as I was saying, that when European countries were facing the COVID, what was happening is that 27 countries, actually 28 on those days, were starting to closing the border. Not a single one was informing European Commission that they will be closing the borders. And this was not cutting only the people's connections to each other, but it was also connecting the connections between the authorities as well as the governments from each other. So, connectivity is happening more digital way than ever before. But of course, this is also leading the situation that the threats are moving in the digital era. Nobody is stealing the horses anymore. Why the bother? It's much more convenient to do all these by home or some other facilities. But it has to be admitted that the criminals, which are many times much more agile than the governments, law enforcement, and so on, they were using this kind of opportunity window. When the people, governments, and enterprises are starting to isolating themselves, it means automatically that the connectivity is not where it should be. And this was also with the telecommunication. We were thinking that we are having good with the healthcare. We were thinking that we are good with the telecommunication bandwidth. And both cases were proven wrong. And of course, that this opportunity window with the disconnectivity between the people and enterprises as well as the governments, were using this kind of, as I was saying, creating the opportunity window, which the many criminals were starting to using. There was a lot of isolated people who were suddenly totally dependent from the digital communication. You were not allowed to leave the house. You were not allowed to go to the bank, use your PC. How easy target these kind of people are. A lot of things, what the enterprises used to be doing face-to-face, shaking the hand, were suddenly based on the digital transactions. And surprise, surprise, not even the companies were ready for that. Same applies for the governments. But it's also having this kind of impact for the big picture, what is coming for the strategies. How many years we have been spending to discussing things like BOID, bring your own devices. That was a challenge. Every single company was thinking that what happens when our job, the employers, the people and staffing are starting to bring their own mobile phones, own tablets, own PCs in the company environment. Nobody was thinking that what would be happening if everybody is taking their company PCs and phones to their home, which should be equally protected as the company environment. So we have been focusing in the certain things which were not the reality anymore. So there has been a lot of discussion about the threats itself, but anyway, the main driver for all this common denominator is the isolation. How to utilize the separation of the people, social distancing for their own benefits. And this is happening. In normal environment, if we are perhaps going to have this kind of normal environment anymore, is that there's security is evolution. Generation by every decade, which has been the telecommunication, 1G, 4G, 3G, LTE, and so on. New cybersecurity challenges, cybersecurity solutions, environments, they have been always going in somehow more or less controlled way. This was not the case anymore, and this was also meaning that like the companies like Huawei, we have been having a certification. This is the way how the companies are proving to other companies, other governments, authorities, that we are doing the good job. You take the product, you take the software, you take the hardware, you are getting the certification, and when the certification has been accomplished, it should be generating certain kind of trust that the product what you are purchasing is what you are expecting. With the 5G, we were already seeing this kind of difference in that. Suddenly we are having the most enhanced, most secure telecommunication system available for mankind, and nobody is trusting the 5G. Instead, the people are burning the 5 days base station because they are thinking that it might be spreading the COVID and sicknesses around the world. And this is not a joke. This is happening all around the world. So, how the companies like us, what we have to stick is the certain procedure to convince the governments, authorities, operator, our customers in the similar way. We are still driving the certifications. So what the industry was doing with the 5G, we took the NESAs. I don't claim that the NESAs would be the best one in this world. No, it's just the best available at the moment. We were not able to wait. The COVID would be disappearing. New systems would be done. But we have to work in this area already now. European Commission has been in the previous week making decision that Europe will be having their own 5G certification. And I was having a serious discussion with the European Commission, asking that dear Commission, certification, creating that, it taking 1 year, perhaps 1.5 years. What are you expecting that the industry and the overall in this planet would be doing the next 1.5 years? I should be sitting down and waiting. This is not solution what we are seeking. So what we will be seeing in the future is what I would not like to see is a certain fragmentation for approvals. And this is boiling down to once again these kind of things like trust. Whose certifications you are trusting. But I'm happy to see that there is a certain progress in Qatar, for example, which is happening. Things like common criteria. To be honest, I'm a fan for common criteria. And the simple reason is that the rules of the game in a common criteria are following that if anybody in this common criteria ecosystem is making certification, all the others are acknowledging that certification. So, of course, there is a certification for the certification, so auditing. And when you are good enough making the certification, your skills and competencies are high enough, then you are allowed to be in this contributor. And this is meaning that you are allowed to make the certification for different kind of products. And all the other members who are in this common criteria consortium are acknowledging that the certification, what you have been doing, is valid. And this is, of course, the dream of every single manufacturer in this planet. You would be taking your product in one single country, one single authority, and they would be making thorough checking what is there inside. Because, to be honest, I'm one of those people who do not believe black boxes. I'm fan for the openness, transparency. I'm willing to share my source code. I'm willing to share my the hardware to show everybody that what I have been doing is good enough. I don't say it's perfect because nobody is making perfect products. And if there would be somebody making perfect products, they would be way too expensive. They would be way too complicated to use, and they would be always last in the market. So my target in Huawei is not to make the best products. I just want to make the best in the market. That's enough. Therefore, I'm happy to see that the Qatar, at the moment, they are consuming partner of the common criteria, would be hopefully soon also be in the authorizing party, which would be meaning that the competencies in Qatar are in the level which is recognized all over the planet. This would be excellent. I have been always, as I was saying, that traveling around the planet and discussing with the governments that what are those things what you have to do to make your national competence level high enough. And it's not rocket science. There are certain fundamental things what you have to build. And I've been always saying is that of course, it's starting from the simple things like, let's agree internally who is accountable from where. The second point is not rocket science either. It's saying that establishing PPP, public-private partnership. There is no government in this world anymore who would be able to say this, that I'm doing everything by myself. I don't need enterprises. I don't need companies. The world is not working like that. And I don't go all these 10 points through, but as I was saying that there are things what are missing from at the moment in many countries. The public-private partnership, international relations, and sharing. So even you would be having the most cleverest firewall in your system, it's only hardware. It's a metal, plastic, memories, and so on. You don't do anything with that kind of system if you don't have the clever people who are able to program and making the cyber intelligence, what they are having in between their ears, put that in to help the artificial intelligence in the firewall to make the right decision. So at the end of the day, everything is boiling down for the things like education, training, information sharing globally, threat landscape understanding, and of course the cyber intelligence. And of course, sometimes it's just good to remember that why are we doing the cybersecurity or privacy? Cybersecurity is still a tool. It's only one of those tools what you are using to protect something. You are having assets. Yes, the cybersecurity can be used protecting your national security. It can be used to protect your privacy. your IPRs, and so on. So even there's a lot of people who are so anxious to sell all this kind of hardware to you, it's good to sometimes to understand that the hardware is not the only blessing. So you are having a lot of other things. And what you have to do is that understand the value, what you are doing. Let's think about this in the Qatar perspective. When I was arriving here, I was installing to my phone ETSRAT application. So suddenly Qatar government has been coming accountable from my healthcare data. And of course, I truly hope that the Qatar government is taking care of my personal, very sensitive information. Am I sick? Am I ill? Am I healthy? And in the future, hopefully in coming years, I'm able to land here in Qatar, and we are having application which I can use in every single country in the world. But this is needing cooperation between the governments, cooperation with the manufacturers, certain trust to make this happening. And that will be benefiting the mankind. Cybersecurity is a joint effort. It's not a journey. It's a journey, not the destination. And what I'm meaning is that when we are having this kind of excellent application like ETSRAS, everybody should be understanding that it's only a starting point. There is a certain things evolution which will be happening afterwards. As I was saying, that global traveling. Similar way, when we are now doing standardization for 5G, 6G, actually we are working already in the 6G. They are timelines which are taking 5 to 6 years, 7, perhaps in the 10 years. So the decisions what we are doing now are impacting to our life in the coming years, perhaps in the decades. And therefore, of course, I'm happy to see that the Qatar government is also participating in things like common criteria. Thank you. In case you are having any questions, I would be more than happy to answer for those, even the tough ones. If nobody is asking the question, then there is two possibilities. My presentation was so good that it was answering every single question what you were having in your mind. Secondly, it was so poor that you don't know where to start asking questions. I'm hoping, of course, the first one, not the latter one. In case no questions, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here. Hopefully next time we are seeing with a less travel restriction, perhaps with the globally working ETSRATs, and we are much more healthier ground, including the traveling as well as the cybersecurity. Thank you.